Hmm? Auto.
Callie wants a stream link. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna link it in protection.
It is now live.
New season.
How is everyone doing today?
I'm tired because I knew you fuckwits wouldn't get the time right.
Well, you know us.
Yes,
Time
yeah,
zones are hard.
we're Wally can't tell time.
No, I were the only one doing it right because I looked at UTC -8.
Don't worry, I plan to hit.
Yeah.
For
yeah,
future
I've
reference, though, the time zones are now updated thanks to daylight savings time.
DSC doesn't shift for like another month here, so feels bad, man.
I actually have no idea when mine is. Let's take a look. It's in a week, actually.
So I think we should just get started since we're live. Since we're live on the air.
We usually wait a few minutes for people to join in and chat, so we don't have to like start
Okay.
immediately.
Okay.
And there's like that Twitch takes like 2 to 3 minutes to even alert everyone that the stream is now live.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Just got it.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't get it, but I have notifications off.
I thought it did, but I got 2 just now.
I mean, they're on, but I don't have email ones. Only like when I'm on the page, they pop up if I'm on Twitch.
Yeah. I think I got extra notified because I'm following myself technically, and I'm hosting this.
Oh yeah, so about the Discord overlay, if you would like to see what it looks like right now, I will show you all. This is currently the Discord voice overlay. As you can see, they broke it. So for those of you wondering, the people in here are myself, Alliance, Lincoln, and Blueprint is our guest.
Hi, Blueprint.
Yes. Hello, Blueprint.
Ahoy, hoy.
Well, Strut, come on, man.
Dude, you're getting bullied in chat, Wally.
Strut, come on, man. Don't do me like that.
I think it's been a good amount of time here now. People will probably still filter in, but we can go ahead and get started.
Sure. So, welcome to another Prot stream. It's unlike other streams in the past, which have been more data oriented. You had a mouse, and then here to talk about WoW Analyzer and more PowerPoint oriented streams. We're going to be talking to Blueprint, and I think everybody generally know who Blueprint is and has interacted with him in either Hammer of Wrath or in Tank Chat or various other places. But we're going to kind of get his point of view on Paladin, tanking, WoW, number of topics across the board. So Blueprint, why don't we just start with a quick introduction and just maybe just give a quick overview of you and kind of just tell folks who you are.
Sure, no problem. Alright, so I am Blueprint, one of the 2 main tanks for the guild, honestly, on the Oceanic Realm Frostmourne. I main tank a Paladin, off tank a Demon Hunter. Fuck you, Blizzard, for ruining the class over and over. I have been raiding in WoW since vanilla. I've taken 2 short breaks at the beginning of Wrath and halfway through Mop. I mained a warrior to begin with, then a paladin, then a warlock, and then back to a paladin again now. That's about it.
All right. Well, that covered about 2 of our questions.
Yeah.
Um,
When did you join, honestly?
At the end of Blackrock Foundry. I joined originally on my warlock. They had been pestering me for ages to join on my warlock, and then the week I joined on my warlock, they decided they hated their other tank who was tanking with pumps at the time. So they booted him and then asked me to tank.
right. That can actually bring us into a viewer question that we had.
Mhm.
How do you find a guild how do you find a guild honestly? How do you get into one of those, especially as a tank?
I mean, the general consensus for tanks for joining guilds, especially on the higher end of the spectrum, is always going to be referrals and just openings. The whole notion of having a backup tank died 3 expansions ago. It's become completely unnecessary. So now you always only want 2 because there's never going to be a situation where you need 3 competent or 3 remotely competent tanks for that matter. So basically, looking for a guild as a tank is more or less always going to be people you know and a guild having an opening, which is
Right.
shit, unfortunately, for most people, but it's kind of just the way it breaks down due to how necessary certain aspects of the.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, if you were to recommend someone who's tanking heroic, how do you tell them to what advice would you give to them for them to climb into the higher ranks?
Oh, I guess
Assuming
it
that,
depends
yeah.
on what you mean by higher ranks. Like, so when you say to climb into the higher ranks, do you mean to look towards a guild that's full clearing content as
Well,
its
let's
current,
say
or a guild that's in mythic?
mid tier, like mid heroic, mid mythic, like getting to Mechatork sort of, right?
Hands down, the single most important thing for every tank is being vocal, and that's infinitely more important than any aspect. Communicating mistakes, communicating when something goes wrong, communicating externals, communicating movement, and like in particular is something people do not do enough. That is absolutely the thing I'd recommend the most is just get comfortable, especially with your co-tank. Like, just be willing to talk, even when it seems like you don't need to be saying the things because they're mundane. Get in the habit of vocalizing everything that may or may not become a problem later.
Okay. So, when you talk a lot, you also tend to meet certain personalities, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, for example, what if you have 2 very vocal tanks that sometimes don't always have the same opinion? Like, how do you work with pumps? Do you ever clash together?
Quite literally never. So Pumps and I have been tanking since the week after I joined the guild, and we raid with more or less the mindset and tank with more or less the same mindset of when we get to an encounter, we basically divvy it up as watch one of our class suits X role better, and then we just break it down via that. And then obviously that changes depending during farm, things like that. But it's pretty much the same. As far as handling a tank you don't really mesh well with, um, it's kind of on you and them to break the mold of not meshing well and get to a situation where you are vocal and comfortable with one another. Because if one of you is very talkative and the other one's an absolute mute, you won't fucking get anywhere. Or if you're both very talkative and you both entirely disagree on the way things should be handled, you won't get anywhere. It's all about finding a balance of where, the logic of what needs to be done versus the player preference of what they would want to do falls in.
So you and him both like to parse, get high numbers. So like, do you guys? It's really easy to figure out stuff out in terms of like who
Yeah.
parses this week or that week.
Yeah, like I passed last week, he'll pass tonight. Like it's on farm, we basically just alternate, or if there's a specific boss one of us needs, fairly regularly, then we'll change it. But for the most part, it alternates. He didn't really give much of a shit until this tier because he was playing on his monk last tier and monk damage was garbage. But now that he's back on a tank that actually does damage again, he's back into it, which is nice.
Do you consider it a competition with him?
No, I know he's gonna get rank 1 just like I am. Like it's pretty expected more or less for both of us. Like I don't see it not happening. So And as far as the competition between us, if we played the same tank, it would be really fucking nice for that in that regard. But you know, you're never going to want two of the same tank for a, in my mind, for high end Prot.
Didn't Limit have two Paladins on Jaina?
Yeah, but Max is a fucking joke of a player, so you can't really gauge anything off that.
All right. There's also been
Okay,
a lot of
moving on.
There's also been a lot of fights where you wanted two monks, right?
Not so much this tier, but previous tier and previous expansion, kind of just in line with Blizzard Flavor of the Month standards, where one class is violently overpowered compared to everything else. That's just an inherent design flaw, especially with Monk, because Monk active mitigation by default is either unbelievably broken or entirely useless and unplayable. And it has been leaning to the entirely broken spectrum for quite a while now.
Yeah. So you also mentioned earlier that when you were looking at a fight, you were also looking at what each tank could do. How do
Mhm.
you prepare for a raid or a tier with such a specific mindset of I play a paladin, here's what I can do?
The answer to this is going to be a whole lot more boring than it would have been if you'd asked me expansion. But the actual raid prep for each tier now that is required, or even done by me and my guild, is basically non-existent out of just baseline stuff. Because we have the benefit of not day raiding and raiding, 17, 18 hours after the raid releases every day. By the time we get to our first mythic raid of the week, every single boss we're going to kill that day has already been killed by, 4 or 5 American guilds who are streaming. So the majority of the prep work that actually ends up being done by us initially is purely just, okay, watch the fucking story. Which is really, really shit in a lot of regards because you don't get to experience any of the learning process firsthand. But it's also kind of beneficial for my guild because no one in my guild ever did raid testing bar me and maybe two other people. So it's kind of just it's a win in a lot of regards, but it really does diminish the raid aspect.
Right, fair enough. Um, when it comes to immunities, like for example on Kil'jaeden, you were the
hmm
only paladin that logged a fight before the next patch. What did you do that was unique on that fight, for example? Like, because that's when you had to have your own ideas because nobody else had done it before you. What
Yeah, of course.
what stuff
The
were you
entire
thinking of?
premise of that was just a spell ward, like can't remember the name of the ability, the cone beam that he does. It just makes for a solo soak as opposed to a group soak, so it avoids any potential one shots. Ideally, I would have been a Guardian Druid for KJ, but then again, we were 3 tank, and we would have been running 3 Guardians, so I don't know the benefit in regards to that would have been. But yes, that just basically came down to magic bop, whereas, it's because we were running a Shadow Priest in our kill as well, immune to knockback in the second intermission, so he didn't have to, and then immune to beam in the last phase, which not particularly too paramount, but it is still something another class or can't do rather.
Yeah. Okay.
You've
Um,
mostly played a paladin on every boss, except exceptions like Exec Vaz, where you played your D. Like, how do you avoid I need to play like monk on this boss, or I need to have this tank on that boss? You usually
Um,
stick to paladin.
I mean, I say this pretty much everywhere. Paladin kind of always serves as the best example of what is always viable and always good, but very rarely great. The class, as far as its limitations, the class's only real limitation is mobility, and it always has been. It can do any tanking role more than adequately based on level of play, but in very, very, very rare occurrence, is it going to be your best choice defensively. Like the only boss in the last 4 tiers where I would say a paladin was definitely your best tank was Coven. And other than Coven, no, not a chance. It was, Warriors post buff heroic, Demon Hunters fucking pre nerf heroic week were unbelievable, and then Druid Monk. So it's one of those things where the class, in my mind, the class is what Blizzard sets as the standard for where a tank needs to be as far as its viability, and then they fall short on classes because they're fucking retarded. But it's always more than viable.
thing with having paladin as a sort of ground base.
hmm
I remember in like when BFA was getting announced and they announced the tank changes, it felt like Paladin would be like, this is how your active mitigation is going to be. What do you feel like? Did Blizzard accomplish that goal? Like, did they make it so that tanks play sort of similarly to Paladins in terms of their uptime and their playstyle? And what do you think of Paladins in general, like in terms of playstyle and how fun they are?
As far as playstyle and how fun they are, they're majority the same as last expansion, with the exception, obviously, of the GCD changes, which were a huge fucking hit. Being unable to min-max your self-healing remotely optimally is absolutely terrible. As far as the active mitigation changes towards other classes, the notion this expansion was it should be less punishing if you fuck up your active mitigation between all classes and things like that. And I guess they did achieve that, as is painfully clear when you look at the meme monk logs from last year. And comparing classes to how Paladins played last expansion, this expansion, I guess they would be more similar now. But because the contrast between having Shield of the Righteous up last expansion, not having it up, was, night and day, I don't really think it's that similar, especially now, whereas you could go through most of these bosses without even pressing your active mitigation on a Paladin, and it wouldn't really make any difference. So I think they touched on it to a degree and got it slightly more online, but purely because of how enormously different active mitigation was, or how much stronger it was last expansion for Paladins. It's just they all feel about the same, to where active mitigation is not necessarily needed, especially when they do stupid things like, give 20% more health on Azra gear for the second tier of the expansion.
What do you think about the tank changes in BFA generally? Just trying to make tanks more healer dependent, etc.
I absolutely fucking hate it. I cannot stand it. It's it's Blizzard's opinion on things obviously varies greatly from mine, but I think anytime options are taken away from you in a raid setting, especially as a tank, and as a tank, there is, outside of your major cooldowns, you kind of cannot guarantee you're going to live via play. Whereas last expansion on Prog, through Toz and Argus or Antorus, especially with the Helm, like, you could really guarantee your survival for a long time based on your own play. Whereas this expansion is like, okay, the difference between running defensive and offensive builds with Seraphim, as far as your damage intake and things like, is basically non-existent, which is not how it should be. Like, my mind is always I'm always in the mindset of Seraphim genuinely should be a big defensive trade-off, and it is not, because Shield of the Righteous is so weak comparatively to what it was. You lose damn near nothing by running Seraphim defensively.
So do you do that on progress at times? Like, were there any boss this tier where you ran Seraphim, or in old era as well?
I ran Seraphim on Opulence, and I ran Seraphim on... I don't even know if I ran on anything last year. I ran it for a bunch of Zulprog, and then I ended up switching off. I ran it for some Goon Prog, which I should have probably run it on the kill, just because it genuinely felt better defensively than Shield of the Righteous did, or than Righteous Protected, sorry. But it is one of those things where it just, even though the trade-off is small, for initial prog learning, it does feel safer, especially when I don't have my timings down on prog, which is obviously the most relevant factor. Just like everyone else, I do have a learning curve when it comes to prog, so I need to ensure my timings adjust and I don't constantly just die to not having my active mitigation up for a 20-second window.
Yeah, speaking of talents, what do you feel about Holy Shield versus Blessed Hammer defensively on, like, a general fights?
Um, I guess it depends. Like, in general on fights, I don't particularly like it. Just purely based on the chance that I cannot stand block as a metric, because it's just a chance to mitigate damage. Blessed Hammer's constant mitigation with Holy Shield will, on average, do more healing or mitigate more damage, or so rather. But it doesn't feel, it's another thing that's once again out of your control when its value comes, and its value being useless at a bunch of times versus useful at certain times, that kind of thing. The only two fights this entire tier where Holy Shield was Mechatalk and Jaina. Mechatalk because he gets an attack speed steroid with a with a damage proc, and then Jaina because obviously you can't Blessed Hammer or Ice Shards because it's a fucking travesty of a boss. And even then, the only other boss where like it's mandatory is Stormwall, purely because the X-axis on Stormwall is so fucked that you cannot Blessed Hammer them. It does not work. You have to jump into the water and die to Blessed Hammer him. It's that stupid.
That's very interesting. So you say that mitigation based on luck is a thing that you don't like, which is fair.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you were in a lower progressed guild, say you were 2 weeks behind what you are currently, do you think that Holy Shield would be more acceptable because you have more gear at that point?
I mean, don't get me wrong. Holy Shield is a perfectly viable prog talent defensively. It's got and any magic source encounter it is going to inherently be better defensively than Blessed. The magic source encounters throughout this tier are not super prevalent as far as constant damage needs to be mitigated, and Holy Shield is completely garbage for giant one-off nukes because it may not proc. It is completely viable, but it's one of those things where the damage loss from going it, in my mind, in my kind of guild, doesn't warrant. But in another guild, I can understand why people would want to use it, and of course, it's completely viable.
Yeah. What I meant was that like the risk of having just a bad luck streak would be mitigated with the increased eye level, right?
To a degree. I mean, like it's majority of death is always going to come down to your play more so than gear. So don't get me wrong, over gearing content is always going to trivialize it to a further degree, but it's
Oh yeah,
still
for
one
sure.
of those things where you kind of will still die if you play it not suboptimally, just enormously bad or enormously poorly.
Fair.
What do you think about the change of this expansion to just jack up Judgment's damage relative to Avenger Shield? Basically, put Avenger Shield in the gutter.
I don't mind Judgment's damage being so high, but Avengers Shield does fundamentally need something because the buff it gives to Shield of the Righteous may as well not. It is not worth it, and not to mention it's also permanently up. You don't have to think about managing it, other than unless you're back-to-back Shield of the Righteous on the opener. Every single Shield of the Righteous you do throughout an encounter will have a buff. It needs something more. The damage needs to be tuned up, even if they change the first Avenger talent to make it single target again, so it no longer has just a ton of excess damage for no reason. But it's kind of fallen off to being a button that you don't even think about pressing, as opposed to last expansion where obviously it was the button. It's kind of just been replaced by Judgment. So I don't know. It's you look at it as every single ability we press kind of supplements something in our rotation, but Avengers Shield is literally just there as a filler, which is really not what it should be.
Wally.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about the next question. So when you're going into farm, right?
Mhm.
You have the mindset of, or I assume you have the mindset of just, it's farm, let's get some good parses, right?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. What is the most important thing that you look out for when you're getting those parses?
Basically timing. So it'll come down to a week by week basis. So the easiest example I can give of this is of a fucking joke boss, but so first boss of the raid, I can't remember the name, Champions of Light. So for the first 2 weeks of farm, because obviously I wasn't aware of the first 2 weeks of farm post Jaina, I wasn't aware of how quick or slow the kill would. So this is an easy example of I'm only going to get 2 Seraphims in the fight because it's a 135, 140 kill, maybe 145 at the longest. So the obvious example in a situation like this is delaying my second Seraphim until my second potion's up, as well as the second ads are up just for free cleave. But when it comes down to looking at it in farm, it will always be just adjusting it based on your current raid's DPS and your kill and post timing. And it's the same with using Rusticon as another example. So basically, it's I think like a 5.5, 6 minute kill, but I'm only going to get 3 wings off. I will be wingsing 5 seconds into the pool, then I'll be holding it for basically a minute and a half after it's off cooldown for the point where we lust and we cleave the ads upstairs with the bot, and it all just breaks down to that, and that will change not necessarily week to week, but it will change a lot on depending on like if we go see a log where there's another tank that's substantially higher than myself or pumps, or we see a kill that's substantially faster than our kills. There's usually something that's changed, and we look at it to see if we can adjust. A decent example of this, which we won't be doing, thankfully, is the new Jaina strat that's being posted around, where instead of leaving the boat during the first intermission, the entire raid stays in the boat and just gets frozen until it ends, and you just break out the ice blocks over and over and over. Now, we will not be doing that, I can assure you, but that's just a simple example of bosses where people do that kind of stuff to pad.
Do you guys look at other guild logs often to see what they're doing, try to adapt their strategies for faster kill times?
Yes and no. We usually have in our mind what the faster kill time strat or changes are. We just kind of gauge it on if other guilds do it first. Like if we see another guild do it before we think it was doable or before we try it, we're like, okay, cool, we'll switch and start doing it now. Like obviously the easy example is like the one phase Victus or the one phase Fetid from last year. So kind of it's just we more or less know what we want to do. The unfortunate one at the moment is Jaina, because in order to actually do a fast Jaina kill, you need to push phase 2 about 40 seconds fast, which sounds unbelievably impossible. But we're already stopping DPS for 25, 30 seconds damn near. But that's the problem with Jaina at the moment, just due to the mechanics where you actually have to push it by that larger degree, or the mechanic overlap makes it impossible from that point on. But yeah, we more or less have an idea of going forward of what exactly we're going to do once farm becomes a relevant thing, whether that be adding certain things to pad on for people or just basing things on. We tend not to do that kind of thing. We tend to more or less make everything based, because in 8 out of 10 cases, kill speed is what dictates highest DPS on a boss anyway.
Yeah, so speaking of padding and high kill timers, or
Mhm.
short kill timers rather, your Grong strategy, was that self-made or was that
Oh no,
imported?
other people have been doing that. We are going to change it this week to do both sets of ads, because you only get 2 sets of ads doing it. We're going to do both sets of ads killed on top of the boss. The timings get a little rough because you have a certain window to kill them before he starts his channel, because they give him 50 energy when he dies. So if you kill one, he starts his channel, and then the other one doesn't die basically the moment the channel starts, you're going to get a 5th stack, which is instantly game over. It's not such a problem for the first ad set because he starts at low energy, so it's simple. But the second ad set, it's a significantly larger problem, because you will be basically doing the first energy drop at 100, doing the second at 50, and then by the time the second set of ads are up, by the time you kill one of those ads, that will instantly ping them to 100. But
So
yeah, the
you
growing
don't
strat is easy.
so you don't actually move out of the explosion. You just take it and heal it.
Yeah, so we basically, at the moment, we did just, last week and the week prior, we did just one set of ads on top of the boss, and then but tonight we will do both sets, and it's very, very easily manageable. It's nothing too significantly overwhelming or anything like it's one of those just stack and raid cooldown thing, and then the raid is a little sketchy for 15, 20 seconds, and it stabilizes again.
All right. Well, good luck with that.
That should be
Sounds
fine.
pretty
It's a trick
exciting.
boss.
Sounds exciting.
I
So there
actually had
are.
a question, Wally.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So you mentioned that a lot of these bosses, you consider them jokes, etc. What are you looking for, like from Crucible? Like, what do you want from the next raid tier?
Hell yeah. I would love another boss of Hellier proportions. If the first boss was a semi-equivalent to Guam difficulties, second boss was equivalent to Hellier, I would be. I don't think that's going to happen. Blizzard has openly stated they hate tuning bosses for the likes of guilds like Method, and their tuning as far as this expansion has been wildly inadequate. The oddly enough, Uldir was tuned infinitely better than this tier was. Fetid was an artificial wall that was impossible, but then it was nerfed once and put to what I think was a really good place. The second 5% HP nerf absolutely destroyed the check on the boss, which was really disappointing because it wasn't a really, really good place for week 1 prog. Yeah, I don't know, just Blizzard's tuning for the first tier is usually easiest, because Blizzard, they're under the mindset of it's a new expansion, people have new abilities, class changes, things like that. So the window to adjust has been shorter. They've had less time to learn this. So they tend to make the first tier easy. Whereas this tier as a whole was not even comparable. It was so much easier than Altair as a joke.
Molly,
Right,
you had a
so-
question?
Yeah, first, I never got the chance to do Helia, or she was nerfed or touched or anything. But I want to ask, just for comparison, do you want the boss to be like the first boss? You want it to be sort of like the boss before Jaina, and then the second boss to be on par or after Jaina in terms of difficulty?
Much harder than Jaina. Jaina is a really stupid fight. So the whole problem with Jaina is the mythic mechanics do not exist. And when Blizzard patched them in, they then realized, oh shit, the guilds are going to cry about it, so we'll take them out. So you have to not deal with the mythic mechanic in the last phase, basically. You don't deal with the fact that the Ice Lance is one shot because you don't get one frozen. You don't deal with having the Watermelon Elemental tagged out for the Frost Novas because, well, we'd never cast Frost Novas because they put it on the same fucking skull lockout. So it's just like, you need to have a boss that first off has its mechanics working and then have the difficulty random. Like last expansion, they did end boss as well. Kil'jaeden was violently overtuned upon release, like unbelievably so. But apart from Kil'jaeden on release, the end bosses or the hard bosses last expansion were all pretty much where you'd want them. Obviously, Antorus was slightly more of a letdown because there was only one boss in the instance. But you look at last expansion as far as the difficulty curve they had a long range. It is hands down the best expansion they've ever done as far as raid content is concerned. But yeah, no, I would want a boss like Halia in the sense of that has quite a lot of mechanical aspects to it because the numbers checks and bosses they're either doable or they're not, and it's very very easy to see and find out if they're doable. And if the mechanical check is not there to hinder your ability to do that, then it kind of just falls over as as repetition kicks in. Sorry.
Yeah. There is another game, Final Fantasy. They have a boss that has that has like a difficulty that's above mythic. Is that what you would want? Like just a single boss and a difficulty that's just way above mythic level? Would you want that and just have to progress that for a month?
Yeah, I would love something like that. I cannot stand farm raiding. It's fucking a joke. But I don't think something like that will happen. Just purely based off of Blizzard design philosophy from last expansion going forward. They do know how to make amazing bosses, but that kind of thing is just too much of the player base would never even touch it, let alone kill it. So for them to spend time to implement something like that just wouldn't happen. But I would love for a boss that takes a guild like mine a month. Certain bosses take my guild significantly longer than it should. We raid a 20-hour week, which on prog ends up usually being 22 to 24 hours, just overtime and early starts and whatnot each week. And Cahoon took us, I think, I want to say like 32 raid hours maybe to actually kill, maybe longer. And it's just like that boss shouldn't have, but it is one of those things where I would love a boss that really just cockblocks my guild for a month.
Right.
I
I'll
don't
be
think a lot of
calling
my
the
guild
overtime.
would like it, but
I will be calling the overtime police.
the
when
overtime
it's
police don't police Oceanic anymore. Feels bad, man.
That's bad. Right. So, back to a bit more about your parsing.
Yep.
People who have looked at your logs have noticed that you're using 2 unused trinkets. How do you use those correctly?
Okay, no. Alright, so using it correctly and using it optimally, the difference between doing it the way I do it and doing it regularly is so ungodly fucking small. I would just say use it normally. So basically, I use Grongs. This is specific to Grongs as one of the on-use trinkets. It cannot or shouldn't be done with any other 2 on-use due to the nature of the trinket and the snapshot factor. So the general premise is ignoring pre-pull. Your first GCD will be your wings plus your first trinket, not Grongs specific. And the general idea is to fill in your regular rotation for the next 8 seconds and then use Seraph. So the premise of this is the Grong's full channel takes 4 seconds. You can't use until the 20-second mark. So by using your Seraphim at the 8-second mark, it will last until the 24-second point. This will ensure you have Grong's buff plus whatever else is applicable. Or sorry, Seraphim buff plus whatever else is applicable during your first Grong. And it also means using Grongs with your subsequent Seraphims doesn't get desynced. Now, the switch to this is just using it regularly, which is using your wings and Seraphim on the pole together with your original, and then using your Grongs after the 20-second lockout period from the first trick at the end. This will force all of your Grongs uses to no longer be with Seraphim, but the DPS loss is unbelievably small by doing it that way. It is not worth it to do it the way I do it at all. It is way too much effort, and it will do your fucking head in.
All right, so just use Seraphim like normal and Grong when it's ready, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. The difference is small enough to the point where if you just RNG one more crit on a Grong's tick regularly, it wouldn't have made a difference. Like it's not large, because you miss time where you have regular overlaps of wing plus Seraphim plus trinket plus whatever your first trinket may be. In my case, it's badge for majority of people. Hopefully, myself included. Shortly, it's the Mechadol.
Right. Okay. We have a picture of your opener here, actually. So how do you, if you didn't have the Grong trinket, how would you incorporate Light's Judgment into your opener?
Basically, so this would prog or farm is just a question for me to ask first.
With Seraphim.
Okay, so we'll just say farm then. So
Yep.
if I have a general idea of kill times, it would depend on if it's going to be close to a 2. So if it's going to be close to a 240 kill, just under, or sorry, between 235 and 240, more accurately put. If it's going to be in that time frame, I would sacrifice an early, higher priority cast in order to get in there to ensure I get 2 throughout the fight. If it's not going to be, I would do my regular rotation until there is a bridge and basically Judgment and Avenger's Shield uptime. Or sorry, Judgment and Avenger Shield cooldown to where I would cast it then. Depending, obviously, if I delay it for ads, if I delay for things to be stacked, that kind of shit. But usually, it's just basically going to be when the GCD I could press instead of Light's Judgment is at its lowest value. That's when it's going to get. Obviously, I ensure it's in the first 12 and a half, 13 seconds because I don't want to miss it in my Seraphim, or I do it prior to casting my Seraphim if I know exactly when it's going to happen. Which is honestly the more common one on farm. It's usually my third GCD if I wasn't running double one use. And then obviously it's just regular rotate from that point.
All right. Do you have any other special tricks like the one I talked to you about, like the Blessed Hammer pre-pull?
Yeah, your magical fucking trick of pressing Blessed Hammer and it might
Go for
no.
it.
No, not really. It all just does come down to repetition more than anything else. The Paladin rotation is very, very simple and basic. There is no real variance. Obviously, the only altering factor is Grand Crusader procs, whether or not you get them, that kind of jazz. And I guess the one thing I could state is people need to get more in the habit of pulling abilities for Seraphim. If you enter Seraphim and you have nothing to press for the next 3 seconds, then you have 1 judgment, you are losing a significant amount of DPS, as opposed to entering with 1.5 judgments, Avengers Shield coming off in 2 seconds and 2 Blessed Hammer. It's all about multipliers, so that is one thing that people need to get in the habit of more. And I myself don't do this optimally all the time either. I make a tremendous amount of mistakes. And that's just getting purely into the habit of making sure you have abilities to use when you Seraphim for damage. Because there's no point in you popping a major steroid and then just auto attack. Does not yield a whole lot.
Yeah, but that auto attack is really hard.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Right, we have another question from a viewer. It's a bit more about you, sort of.
hmm
The Totolan World quests, when you have to draw shapes, how do you deal with those?
You get on your horse and you run along the line before the shape, like before the indicated disappears. Otherwise, it is fundamentally impossible to complete.
Right, okay. Thank you. And that was pretty much all of my questions. Do you have any, Lincoln?
No, I think I'm good. It was a very good interview.
Right. Thank you for being here, Blueprint. And I think we're going to wrap it off now.
All right, thanks folks for joining us today. Blueprint, thanks for joining us. I think the next stream skill tour is going to be a holy stream. They're still deciding the date. It'll be posted in Discord, announced through appropriate channels. So stay tuned.
Take it easy.
Take it easy. Bye bye. I thought that went pretty well.
Skell, you all right?
We're still on air, by the way.
Yeah. Welcome back, Skeletor. We are done now. We'll probably be back in June sometime.
April 6th. I have updated the time zones to properly display what time they will be, so double check those if you are affected by daylight savings time, because it happens for some reason.
Come on, man.
But we'll have this VOD
Oh, Scal,
uploaded later.
your mic is muted apparently.
I can hear him. I can hear him.
You got?
No, it's muted in stream.
No, it's not. I see my
Oh.
bar lighting up on OBS. It's not muted on stream. And I see that my icon's lighting up green in there too, so.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll have this up on YouTube later, and that's all for now. Thank you, and have a good day.
Bye-bye.